I woke up to find my front door chained from the outside and a bright orange notice screaming emergency compliance fee. $750 taped dead center on the glass, like a ransom bill for living where I live. And in that moment, the switch flipped. I stopped asking for fairness and started collecting receipts. My place sits on the fringe of Sagebrook Ridge in Hawthorne County, North Carolina. The kind of neighborhood where the mailboxes match the lawns, look airbrushed, and the rules read like they were written by someone who hates surprises. I painted my front door a storm gray. I mixed myself because I like it that way. And on day 3 at 6 a.m., the HOA president Shelby Crane showed up with a customer service smile and a clipboard that could bruise handed me a $500 fine for an unapproved hue. Said, "It's not the color, it's the compliance." And I remember thinking, okay, so we're doing this. The drip began before the coffee even brewed. $150 because my trash bin was visible by a sliver from the street. $200 for an unapproved cedar trellis. My tomatoes adored a warning about my flag bracket that was actually compliant. If anyone bothered to read the tiny print, and every notice arrived before dawn on heavy paper, like a wedding invitation to a fight, you know what I mean? I tried to be decent. Highlighted. The covenant pages took photos, wrote a polite email you could read out loud in church. A board member named Allison said thanks. We'll review. And the fines kept coming anyway, which felt a lot like arguing with a car alarm at the next meet and greet. Shelby took the mic and said, "Some of us are still learning our community." Standards didn't say my name, but all eyes shifted like the thermostat just dropped. And that night, a code officer named Dean cruised my curb with a decibel meter for a complaint about silence that sounded exactly like compliance pressure with a badge. A week later, at 2:17 a.m., a tow truck winched my pickup from my own driveway for commercial signage. Yeah, that happened. Even though the logo was a magnetic panel, I could peel off with my thumb. The tow yard clerk shrugged. "Talk to your HOA." The HOA shrugged. "Talk to the tow yard." A tidy loop, a neat trap. Right before dawn the next day, 2 silhouettes in hoodies sprayed "comply" across my garage in block red letters and jogged off. Like they had a schedule to terrorize. Officer Dean. Looked, said, could be kids. And I pointed at the font that matched their door hangers. So perfectly, a graphic designer would blush, and he gave me that public neutrality that feels like a head pat. These things go smoother when everyone works with the community. My next-door neighbor met his Barlow cardigan and cane, and a heart like a lighthouse whispered honey. My doorbell camera caught something, and there it was. The HOA property manager, Chad Morton, hustling up my steps at 5:59 a.m. with a neon notice and a man in a jacket stamped "Municipal Compliance," the city logo just off enough to itch your brain. The timestamp matching my notice to the minute, and she squinted and said, "That's not the city." And I said, "No, it is not." That's when I hired a lawyer, because there's a level of nonsense where you need someone who speaks court, and mine is named Noah Pierce, a guy whose tie looks permanently untanned and whose brain is wired to notice knives hiding inside paperworks, he said. We send the formal dispute, force preservation demand violation logs, and contractor invoices, and board minutes drop a spoliation letter that basically says, "Don't you dare shred a thing." And meanwhile, I write down thing. I timestamp the air. The HOA answered with a 2-page lecture that used community 7 times, and Lean twice taped that emergency compliance fee to my door. And that was the morning I found the chain through my handle, wrapped from the outside, like my house needed to be restrained for its own good. And when I cut it off on camera and confronted Shelby on the sidewalk, she didn't blink. That chain wasn't us, but cooperation goes a long way. And I said, "Is this you offering a discount on my silence?" And she smiled at a horizon only she could see. Noah filed the letters. We hit the city with records requests, and the city wrote back plain as daylight. No night inspections on our street, no assignments, no municipal anything. So we ran the plate from Mrs. Barlow's video, and it pinged a private contractor called Metro Code Services LLC, whose vans happen to wear logos you might confuse for official if you're moving fast, or you like being fooled. And when the HOA finally coughed up vendor invoices there, it was line items timed to every ugly night at my house, including night sweep, target parcel. My parcel and I laughed that weird, exhausted laugh, because sometimes you either laugh or you punch drywall. I sat at my dining table under a lamp like a detective in slippers, scanning labeling files with names. Even a jury could follow. Noah worked the subpoenas. Ms. Barlow brought biscuits because she believes carbohydrates can carry you through a war. And we found board minutes where Allison objected to enhanced enforcement and got outvoted by Shelby and her yes men, Brent and Kyle. And in the margin, someone had typed, "Sensitive homeowners require structured guidance," which sounds polite, until you realize it's a leash with grammar. The twist landed when Metro Code subpoena showed up half redacted and still gave us gold. Dispatch logs putting their crew on my street on the exact nights I was non-compliant, bills paid by Sagebrook Ridge for neighborhood harmony, enhanced protocol, and a little rental charge that said uniform. Municipal, like they keep a closet for pretending they're the city. And Noah leaned back and said, "We're done being nice. We printed exhibits the size of dinner plates, asked for a speaking slot at the board meeting, and right before I walked into that clubhouse that smells like carpet." Remembering better days, Noah told me a process server was on standby with a temporary restraining order. The judge was reviewing, and if it lands while we're in the room, he said, casual. As weather, they'll get served in front of their neighbors. The folding chairs were full binders, clutched like shields. Shelby at the head, with Brent and Kyle bracketing her, and Allison staring at notes. Like a person choosing when to speak. And when homeowner comments opened, I carried a banker's box to the mic and let my voice do what I trained it to do. Stay even, stay sharp, stay human. You said this is about standards. I agree. So let's read your standards together. And I held up a blown-up photo of my flag bracket alongside the covenant clause. That makes it legal asked why it was fined. Once flipped to the towing contract, showing pre-signed authorizations that let a truck take my vehicle at 2:17 a.m. On a generic directive, asked who thinks that's normal and wants to say it into the microphone. A ripple of nervous laughter. Shelby tapping her pen like a metronome for power. Then the Metro Code invoice labeled night sweep, target parcel. Then Mrs. Barlow's doorbell still of Chad, and that fake municipal jacket with a city email confirming no inspection existed. And Shelby leaned in. Your time is up. And something quiet stood up inside me and answered. So is yours. The back doors opened, and the process server walked down the aisle like Sunday school for consequences, handed envelopes to Shelby and Chad. And Noah read into the mic. A temporary restraining order has been entered. All HOA enforcement actions are halted, pending discovery. Metro Code, preserve your records. Officer Dean looked at the first page and cleared his throat. The order is clear. Brent and Kyle whispered like they were auctioning off excuses, and Allison finally raised her head and said, "I move to suspend President Crane as presiding officer, pending investigation, and terminate the Metro Code contract." And Brent sputtered about irregular procedure and Mrs. Barlow lifted her cane like a baton and said, "You will vote now." And the gavel hammered once, twice, and the motion carried, and I didn't smile or cheer or pose for a detergent commercial. I put my exhibits back in the box and walked out into the humid night, where the same air tasted different, because the weight wasn't living on my ribs anymore. The week after was slow and strange. The contractor van stopped haunting my block. The bright notices vanished. The bank sent a note that felt like an apology, without the courage to say sorry. The HOA accounts were basically frozen until the court could sort the mess. People who avoided my eye at the grocery store started nodding. I heard they said. And on the neighborhood forum, Shelby's friends talked about tone and civility and safety, because when the mask slips, the story changes, and Noah called with updates. I can't repeat because lawyers love the word pending, but he said one thing I wrote on a sticky note. Bullies escalate to keep the mask on when the mask falls. They talk about tone. And I slept a little better. Not perfect, but enough. And the tomatoes kept thriving, because tomatoes do not care about Robert's rules. Look, I know someone will say, HOAs keep neighborhoods clean, and I knew what I signed, baby, where you live. The board is a potluck and not a power trip. But here, a few people learned to weaponize the word community and aim it at whoever made them feel small. They called it harmony. They rented uniforms. They wrote checks to a problem and named it a solution. And when the paper trail came back with their names on it, they said my voice was the real problem. So tell me, are HOAs about standards or control? Are we keeping streets tidy? Or are we building levers to micromanage the house next door? And if you've been on either side, the clipboard or the bolt cutters, I want to hear you. Drop your story and where you're watching from. Tell me if I was right to fight, or if I should have paid. To make it go away, tell me where you draw the line between community and control. Because the rules only mean anything when we agree who they're for.